and gentlemen, people make decisions all the time, but are they making the right decisions for the right reasons? All right, now we have a selected group here, a much smaller group. Simon Sinek wrote, if a leader gets the environment right, he or she creates an organizational culture that works to the natural inclinations of the human animal. Now, he gets pretty wordy with some of his stuff, but the result is, when you do this, is you have an entire group of self-motivated people. And that's what you need, is self-motivated people. You cannot motivate people. They have to motivate themselves. Now, let's take that one step further. When you are directly responsible for the lives, not just the jobs or their careers, but their actual life of the people under your purview, you better get the environment right. And that's my next guest story. Let's meet him. My guest today is John Cacolice. Now, John served in the Army as a combat engineer. We're going to explain what that is here in a little while. Now, after completing his tour of duty, John, like many veterans, worked in several areas until he found the right environment where he could be someplace where he could make decisions for the right reasons. Now, John's a contributing author to the upcoming book, Business Secrets from the Battlefield to the Boardroom. This book will be available in late March, and there's stories by veterans, parents, spouses, and supporters in their own words. This is a book you have to get. So, John, welcome to Life Altering Events.
Welcome. Thanks, Frank. I appreciate being here, sir.
It's our pleasure. Our pleasure. Now, John, you were born into a military family. Okay. What's that like growing up?
So my dad was he was a retiring colonel out of U.S. Army. He was a depot commander in Pennsylvania, and my sisters followed in his footsteps pretty quickly. The two of the three older sisters went into the military, and so you got a colonel for a father, and you got officers for sisters. You don't have much wiggle room to get things wrong.
Exactly.
But it was an enjoyable experience because it taught me personal accountability at a very young age. You didn't get away with much.
Exactly. And you probably got to see some places you probably would have never gotten to.
The only place I went with my parents I was born in Germany to military parents, but of course I don't remember that. But I got to go to Connecticut with my parents. And then when he retired, he came back to Pennsylvania. So,
John, we spoke a while back. You said you had the opportunity to go to West Point. You chose not to go. Why? That's like nirvana for the military guys.
A couple of reasons. One, I wasn't sure I wanted to make the military a thing in my life. I really wasn't that committed to the process to do a West Point endeavor. What my excitement was to follow my dad to the University of Pittsburgh. That was his alma mater, and so I applied to I applied to the University of Pittsburgh. My fallback was, okay, I'll take this West Point assignment if that doesn't fall through. And I got Pitt, and that was it. I just turned the blinders on and I just ran hard at Pitt, and I did whatever it took to get to Pitt.
So, you did ROTC in Pitt. Is that correct?
Did. Well, so I did. It started as a sophomore. My freshman year, I was just a footloose, fancy free engineer, a mechanical engineer, student just trying to survive, as most engineer freshmen do. And my sophomore year, I realized I need a little bit more discipline in my life. This college thing's going to eat me alive if I don't. So I joined the ROTC program.
You were one of the smart ones, because the college life can eat you up. It's just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're a combat engineer. You're 22 years old. First off, most of the world doesn't know what a combat engineer is. So tell us what that is. And then what was it like being 22 and being, in fact, charged of people who had a hell of a lot more experience than you?
Well, so combat engineer, let's begin there. A combat engineer, my job is to find, fix, and destroy obstacles for the U.S. Army so that we can project military power into our enemies and destroy them. They're going to throw all sorts of things, booby traps and landmines and tank traps and ditches and buildings even. And my job was to be highly proficient in all the mechanisms the U.S. Army can bring to bear to destroy and remove those obstacles, and to allow the sharp tip of the spear to go at the enemy with its full force. That was a great job. I mean, I got to play with explosives. I got to make little rocks out of big rocks in fractions of seconds. It was a fantastic job. I enjoyed the snot out of it. But to be a 22-year-old platoon leader in charge of combat engineers, that's a humbling thing, sir. And you've got to remember, as the 22-year-old, and I'm going to call it snot-nosed, wet behind the ears lieutenant, I'm really not in charge. I'm ultimately responsible, but I'm really not in charge. And I think my claim to fame is I had some senior NCOs who really poured into me and pulled me aside and said, hey, listen, here's how this is going to go. And I quickly realized, matter of fact, my first platoon command, I pulled in all of my senior leaders, my E5s, E6s, E7s. I said, who in here thinks, by show of hands, that I know more about combat engineering than anybody in this room? Nobody raised their hand to include. And I said, okay, great. We're all in agreement. So the fact of the matter is, you know how to do the missions I'm being tasked with. So I'm going to carry this mission to you and say, this is what we have to do. What's the best way to do this? And that's your opportunity to influence the mission and get your fingerprint on this operation. Because I'm going to come first to you and ask you, and then I'm going to have to tell you. And I want to make sure that when I tell you, it was your plan too. And let me tell you, I had 100% buy-in on every one of my plans because they helped write it. And that was the key. And something I learned very early in my military career was I was not their very first lieutenant. Most of these guys had been through half a dozen of me. And so for me to come in, oh, I'm going to take charge. I'm going to be in charge. Look at all me. It's not about me. And it never was. And my job is to make sure I clear the obstacles for my combat engineers so they can go forward and do great things. And that was my claim to fame.
That's an incredible level of maturity at that age. Most of us don't get that ever, but you finally get to a point where, hey, I did turnarounds of failing companies. I walk in, and, well, how would you do? I've been here 15 seconds. You've been here 5 years. Talk to me. Let's see what we can do.
Fix? You got a magic wand that could touch it and make it right. What would you do?
Exactly. You had some interesting stories, near misses. Tell us one of those.
As a combat engineer, there's quite a few of those, not by design. I've had a squad of engineers drop landmines at my feet on their heads, and they're bouncing on their firing pin. You got a 22 kilogram anti-tank mine bouncing on the head of a pin, quite literally the head of a pin. Everyone take a step back and go change your underwear, and we'll meet back here in 5 minutes. We've been stuck in minefields in Bosnia. I've had a driver in Bosnia who used to, every time a big dump truck would come, she'd drop the right tire into the dirt on the side of the road, that's where the landmines are. That's where the not by any malintent, but that's where the farmers would bring them when they dug them up. They'd bring them to the side of the road because they knew the combat engineers would find them and take them, or blow them up, as the case may be. So she would be driving off into the dirt. You find yourself in precarious situations, but your military training kicks in and says, okay, I got this, and we'll just work our way through it.
I've met some combat engineers, and they seem to be the calmest people in the world.
Glad you said
Why
that.
is that?
Because it doesn't do well to startle around explosives. I was just having this conversation with my 13-year-old daughter. Something dropped in the kitchen, really loud noise, and everybody in the room, hit the ceiling, boom, and jumped. And I just slowly, calmly turned and looked at the thing, and everyone's like, well, why don't you startle? I said, I don't have that built into me anymore. I just don't. And I think that's true of anybody who's been in a life-threatening situation, Frank, is especially the military folks. And this is why we're kind of wired a little different. When you put your life on the line on purpose, you tend to work through the emotional response and the knee-jerk reactions, and you become very focused on the task. You don't panic. You don't run around with your hair on fire and waving in the air and screaming. That serves no purpose. And so you tend to get laser focused on the thing, and you solve the problem. And then we carry that out in the civilian world. And everyone says, oh, well, he's got PTSD or he's broken. Well, no, I don't have the same startle response you do. I startle, but it's better be big, and it better be a couple 1,000 pounds coming at me.
That's right.
Otherwise, you're just going to get laser focused.
That's right. One of the guys who wrote his article in the book said, panicking in the war zone gets people killed.
And quickly.
Yes.
And usually the guy to your left and right too.
Exactly. Now, John, one of the things you told me was one of your saddest moments occurred when you came back home from Bosnia. Now, this a lot of people don't equate this with the military. They see you as machines and not people. Tell that story.
That was pretty low point for me, Frank. So I came off a plane from Bosnia, just did 8 to 9 months in Bosnia. And, you come off with your A bags and you're flying over, you've got quite literally an airliner full of troops. And we're so excited to be coming home. And a lot of these guys were coming home to family. I had actually lost a fiance on my way over to Bosnia. So it was a mixed bag for me. But, you get off the plane and you're carrying your A bags and you're picking your stuff out of the big pile and you turn around and your soldiers are maintaining discipline, their own formation. They're doing what they're supposed to do for accountability purposes. And then there's the release and all these troops go running into their loved ones. And I'm standing there. I look at this crowd of people hugging and kissing and children. And I realized I'm alone on the airstrip. I had nothing. I had nobody. And all I had was my entire life was encompassed in two duffel bags and a rucksack on my back. And I was like, wow, this sucks. This sucks. And it really hit me. What am I investing in? Where's my future? What is this going to lead for me? And my saving grace, Frank, was I had one friend, my roommate actually couldn't even pick me up at the airport because he was at the National Training Center. He was also military. He's actually my business partner now, but he was at the National Training Center. So I reached out to my very dear friend, Amy Ross, who was, she was a military widow. And she was, the military had brought her back to Fort Hood after her husband got killed about a year or so previous. And she was my only friend that was available at Fort Hood. Everybody else was gone, deployed somewhere else. So I give her a call and say, hey, can you pick me up? Would you mind? Because I couldn't even it was an hour-long wait to get a taxi because everyone was taking taxis home.
Exactly. And then Killeen, Texas is not known for having hundreds of thousands of taxi cabs.
Yeah, not so much.
It would have been interesting. So given that story, plus with your long military history, you chose not to stay in the Army. Is that why?
That was one of the many reasons. Frank, my sisters, like I alluded to earlier, my dad was military. I had two older sisters who were military. And I reached out to one she was an 04 at the time. I said, Jenny, I'm looking to stay in or get out. What do you think? What do you see as a military career? What's you looking ahead? What would you do different? And she said, John, that's a good question. It was a very rewarding thing. I wouldn't give it up for the world. But just to be clear, those whole years of my children's lives, I know nothing about. I know I have pictures and that's it.
Wow.
And I really stung because here I was with nobody. And I'm like, man, how can I promise someone a future like that? Oh, and that really kind of tipped the scale for me. I watched my parents flip around the world. And I heard those stories. I had a sister who was married to another military gentleman. Both my military sisters were married to military. They're getting deployed all over the place and hear those stories. And it's, I really just didn't want that for my family. I wanted my kids to know that the gentleman down the street was a good guy, that, when they see that yellow dog come trotting down the sidewalk, that dog's pretty friendly or not.
Right.
And I wanted them to know their community and their neighborhood, which is something that my sisters really didn't. Every 3 to 4 years, they were somewhere else.
Right.
I don't want that.
It's that stability factor that is so critical for children. That this is a big thing, John. You're a career military family, and you chose family first.
I did, and the hope of a family. To be perfectly honest, because I made the decision to get out before I met my wife. Before I decided to make her my wife. Excuse me. But
that's wild. So you decided to get out. All right. And this is something that we're going to talk about more when we talk about the Houston Veteran Chamber.
Sure.
But like many veterans, you get out and then you sort of bounce around and try and find different jobs, okay? Because it's thank you for your service, but it's not how can you help my business? It's just, it's not there. So you told me one time you had this big aha moment, and it was a book. What was that book, and what did it do?
You'd have to refresh my memory. There's been a couple books.
Wired That Way.
Wired That Way. Oh my gosh, yeah, by the Litauers. There's 2 books, Wired That Way and Personality Plus, I think, by a mother and daughter team, Maria Litauer and Francis Litauer. But taught me about my personality type and how my personality type tends to interact with other personality types. And it was the first time. The military doesn't really care what your personality type is. You're wearing green, move out, draw fire. So to get out and actually start peeling back the onion skin on this person and say, what do I do and how do I do it? And how do I interact with other people? Because apparently they're not receiving me well. I should probably figure this out. And I had I got into an organization called Amway, which most people are familiar with. And I had a business coach and who there's a way to, I can tell you what's wrong with your personality, Frank, and you just, reach to the phone and punch me. Or I can hand you a book and say, here you go. You should probably read this. And that's exactly what he did. He said, hey, John, I got a great book you might be interested in. So I read this book, and every time I threw this book against the wall, it was a weird thing. Every time I picked it back up and opened it to page 19, it told me the same thing. And I'd throw it again and pick it up and read it again. I'm like, oh, man, I should probably internalize this. This is important. And it taught me how to become a people person instead of a directive person. The knife hand went away, and now it's more, hey, tell me your story and invest in other people and their emotions. That was important.
You wrote in your chapter about I think it was you're working for Cintas, and the manager saying they're not working fast enough. You're in the military, make them go faster.
Yeah, that's a great. So yeah, it was a young buck. I had a young captain out. I'm working for Cintas Uniforms. I was helping manage the plant, and I had about 135 ladies working for me and three gentlemen. Most of them were Spanish speaking. I had a couple of Vietnamese, a couple African Americans, and I think I was one of the few white people in the plant. But my plant operator, my manager said, hey, listen, they need to hang more shirts. They need to do this faster. I said, okay, well, I'm pushing as hard as I can. He goes, you were in the Army. Can't you make them do it faster? Yeah, Mark, I can, but every time I yell at them, they cry. I can't make them do push-ups. I don't carry the force of law anymore. And that was something that was hard for me to transition to, because every time in the military, when a subordinate would disrespect me, you flash shot, you drop them for push-ups, and you make them do push-ups till my arms get tired. That doesn't apply to the civilian sector.
Exactly. You had an interesting story, John. I was working with a full colonel.
Yeah.
He got out and he's in the outside. He goes, Frank, how do you do this? He goes, I'm giving orders all damn day long and no one's listening.
No one's listening.
And I said, well, Colonel, number one, you're not in the Army anymore. And number two, nobody gives a damn what your orders are.
Yeah. I remember my sister Jenny, when she retired out of as a light colonel and she became GS, she showed up to work a couple of weeks later in civilian uniform, and instead of on her door was Lieutenant Colonel Brown, it was Jenny Brown. And she said, I really had to talk. Had to go to my door, go to my office, shut the door, and have a talk with myself about what that meant. People were going to call me by my first name now, which they hadn't done in over 20 plus years. Exactly. Oh, and that was hard to get used to.
It is. It's a big challenge as part of that transition. So you did a few of these jobs, and then you decided, I'm working like crazy for somebody else.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my own thing. Tell us about that.
I had a business partner. I had a roommate in the military, Ben Ramos. This guy's a brother from a different mother. I will run through brick walls. I will take a bullet for this man and his family. We gently separated after the military. He went to Dallas Fort Worth and I went south. He worked for a couple companies and eventually started a real estate company, a real estate endeavor. And I was just so done pulling levers and pushing switches for everybody else. Reached out to him, said, Ben, there's got to be something else. He says, man, I've been telling you about real estate for about 6 years. You ready now? You ready? How about now? So, yep, I was ready. And he believed in me to the point where he covered my bills for a few months so that I could focus on real estate and do it faster and better. Popped out of that endeavor with my real estate license, and we went to work for another brokerage. And we quickly realized that brokerage, as good as it was not focused on customer service. And it didn't necessarily do the right things for the right reason. The right things got done because it was filled with good people, but not necessarily for the right reasons, because it's a complaint issue, check the block. That sucks. When you do it because it's policy and not because it's the right answer, you've got a culture problem. And Ben and I were looking at each other. He says, listen, I've already got my broker's license. Let's start our own company. Let's start our own brokerage. Man, I am on board with that. And it was his brainchild to do this. And we've always wanted to be in business together. And this was our chance to start our own company. So we did. And
talk about this environment.
What's
Talk
that?
about this environment that you've built, because everybody knows real estate people.
Yeah, real estate. Well, the unfortunate side is we're viewed as used car salesmen. It's all about the dollars, and so what we did is we established me as as part owner. I don't take a commission off of any deal. I take a salary, so I'm paid the exact same amount every month, no matter what. So I don't see dollar amounts over any house. That's not how this works. My job is to help you. As a combat engineer, my job was to find, fix, and remove problems. As a real estate agent, my job is to find, fix, and remove problems for this family and make sure this transaction goes smoothly and they can go about their business with as little stress as possible. And for instance, Frank, doing things for the right reason. We were at the closing table and the builder had promised our client $2,000 to buy out their contract for an apartment buyout. Well, that didn't materialize. The sales rep on the other side didn't drop the paperwork with his company in time, and so it wasn't going to happen. And so my client's like, "Oh my God, what do I got to do? I got to come up with. I just closed on a house. Here's all my money. I just did this thing. I don't have $2,000 to fix this." I said, "I do." And so I pulled out my company checkbook, wrote him a $2,000 check, and said, "Here you go. This will solve your problem." And she pushed back. She said, "No. This is not your problem. You're not the one supposed to fix this." I said, "I know, but I'm the one who can. So let me do it." And it was the right answer, Frank. It was just the right answer. Solve the problem. And I gave her the money and she solved her problem. It took about 6 or 7 months to get that money back from the builder, but I'm okay. I got it. I'll take care of it.
Right.
And that was the right answer. And doing the right thing for the right reasons felt great. And that's just how we function. That's the corporate culture we have in our company.
And that's outstanding. And more people are trying to get there, but procedure and process and money gets in the way, and you've gotten past that, which I applaud you.
Yep.
Now, John, I met you through the Houston Regional Veterans Chamber of Commerce. I have to read it because I always forget one of the names, where you serve as the executive officer.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What makes this group so special? I've been talking about it all over the world. Tell me in your words.
Wow. So that's a tall order, Frank. The Houston Regional Veterans Chamber of Commerce, we endeavor to, on two fronts, we endeavor to solve a military problem. If you were Air Force, correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
When you were in the Air Force, did you ever do anything? Were you ever sent on any mission by yourself?
No, never.
Never, not once. Battle buddy for everything. So here we are as military veterans. We get out. We start a family. We say, "I'm going to start this business," and we try and do it. We throw our blinders on, say, "I got this." And we don't tell anybody. We don't complain to anybody. We don't ask for guidance, because in the Army, man, bring me solutions. Don't bring me problems. I don't want to hear your mouth. And so we get out. We do the exact same things, except we don't bring a battle buddy. We try and do it ourselves.
Yes.
Frank, what we've noticed is one, as military veterans, we have a higher rate of success overall versus civilian sector, but it tends to lead to either bankruptcy, divorce, or it's just abject failure, and not necessarily in that order.
Exactly.
What if you had a ecosystem of other veterans who could come alongside you and solve problems incrementally? And it's not a handout. At no point is it a handout. What if I could just give you a handout? "Hey, Frank, I see what you're doing. Did you know that there's another veteran on the other side of town who could probably solve that problem for you? Let me introduce you." And that's it. That's as much as it takes. And then they start speaking the same language. They swap stories, of which only 10% have to be true. And then, they solve problems for each other. And, this one's got some business. This one has his business a little bit better. And they move forward and do great things together. And here's what I know. If I can help Frank Zaccari's business get bigger, he's probably going to hire 1 or 2 more veterans. And guess what? I have veteran sourcing agencies that will find those veterans for him. And so I've solved 2 problems. I've made a veteran business more successful, more profitable. I fed his family, and I've also employed at least 1, maybe 2, maybe 6 more veterans. That's a win. That's a win. And all I had to do was, 1, get that veteran to come out of his box and identify the fact that, hey, listen, I don't have to do this by myself. And 2, understand that, hey, listen, there's a community around me that wants to support me, both civilian and military. And that's it. That's really as hard as it gets, Frank. And that's where we do things different. I love the organizations. There's a plethora of organizations out there for the veteran. Fantastic. We spend a lot of money and a lot of clickbait on the broken veteran. That's great. No problems. But that's less than 5% of the veteran population.
That's right.
What about the rest of us? I just want to be a successful businessman, but I don't speak the same language as my peers, right? I don't have the same challenges. I don't know how to ask for help without feeling bad about myself. What if I could plug in an organization that doesn't make me feel that way, and that can actually loves to see me succeed and is excited about it, and will put me on a pillar and say, look at the fantastic things this veteran is doing, and he's maybe broken, but who cares? We don't have to give him a free puppy or free suit or a resume. You know what? This guy's already doing the thing. Now what? How do we help this guy?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's what separates the Veterans Chamber of Commerce. We're quite literally in blue ocean. No one's doing what we're doing.
Exactly. When, ladies and gentlemen, as I interact with this organization, and they're gracious enough to be the first group to jump in on this book, they close the loop, which very few people do. And I can't tell you how many organizations I talk to, and they say, well, we go from here to here. And I said, well, that's wonderful, but now what? I'm going to help a veteran become a business owner. How? How are you going to do it? They don't have an answer.
Yeah.
These people have an answer. They have a network of people, and they do continuing education. So they're constantly training them on the latest things. That's wonderful. The other side of the equation is who's going to contract with these veterans?
Mm-hmm.
And they go out to contractors, and they go out to the government entities, and they go out to the big in the Houston area, oil and gas companies.
Yep.
Look at what we have here. We have employees and we have business owners that can fill in the hole.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes this organization, in my opinion, so special, is it closes that loop. Now, there's you and David, who are the primary two people. How are you doing this?
Brute force. I'm gonna throw some accolades in Dave's direction because he won't do it for himself, to be honest. Dave is a prolific networker. He fortunately runs a financial planning business that affords him the ability to have some free time to go network like crazy. He gets in rooms with, and Frank, when I say everybody, I do mean everybody. Dan Crenshaw, the mayor of Houston, the 6-figure, 7-figure CEOs of the C-suite players all across Houston. He gets in behind closed doors with these guys and says, hey, listen, you need this done. I've got a company that can do it. And he is the biggest advocate for veteran-owned businesses that I have ever met. Frank, I've encountered all sorts of organizations that are military-based or, oh, we're going to do this great thing. This is the first one I've bought into and said, yeah, I'll play. And Dave is the impetus for that. I will follow that man to the gates of hell and back. He is doing great work, and I am honored to be his executive vice president and help him do that. But what we do is simple. Let me give you, for instance, we go to the Houston mayor's office, this supplier diversity office, and they're tracking all the supplier diversity. How do we network with, how do we, the African-American, the Hispanic chamber, how do we network with the female-owned business chamber? How do we do hey, where's your list of veteran-owned businesses? What? We don't have one. Why not? Do they not count as a minority? Well, yeah, they do. Okay, well, show me your list. Well, we're just not tracking. Well, why not? They couldn't give us an answer. And so up until about 8 months ago, they weren't tracking it. They just weren't tracking. Nobody was on our radar.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the challenge we have, Frank, is of the minority classes, the veteran is the only one who has to apply for status.
That's right.
Everybody else is guaranteed the status by nature of them being.
Yes.
I have to stand up and say, I'm a veteran-owned business. And Frank, that's one of the hardest things we have. I've got to get the Frank Zaccaris of the world to stand up and on their business card say veteran-owned.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to go to the Texas Veterans Commission, with Greg Shigemasa and say, hey, here's my paperwork, Greg. What else do you need? And get that designation. I got to go file for one of the 6 federal designations. I got to go do that. That's important.
That's right.
And the veteran, when you bump into them and you say, hey, man, you got to go get this thing done. They're like, it's just more paperwork. I'm not worried about it. But they don't understand is that you are part of the largest fraternity in the city of Houston, but also the quietest. And that's a terrible thing. We have the second largest veteran population in the free world. And we're about to pass Los Angeles. They're the number 1. We have 30 to 40,000 veterans coming to Houston every year, or the region, I should say, every year. Yeah. Where are they going? What are they doing?
Exactly.
Nobody knows.
Nobody is. It's out there. And you have a map for veterans that they can put what they are. They can put their events up,
Yep.
places that they're going. You have events so that they can come and go to them. Folks, I went to their chamber expo,
Our veteran business expert.
Veteran Business Expo in Houston, San Diego, to that thing.
And we thank you for that.
This organization's been in place not quite 2 years. Not quite 2 years.
Not yet. We're only at 18 months.
And the place was full. It was full of veterans looking for opportunities. It was full of businesses who had jobs and veteran-owned businesses, and contractors and business people who were looking to fill needs. Okay, what organization does that in less than 2 years? Most people can't find their desk in 2 years. These people have really put something together that's unique. And so if you are an organization, you better get a hold of these people, John and David, and follow this model and become an affiliate or do whatever it takes to do what they're doing, because nobody else is doing it.
No one else is doing it, Frank.
So what I love about what you have, John, is how focused it is, because organizations, they have like 12 things on their list. You don't.
Yes. Yeah. So when we first started, there was a national charter and they were trying to do 5 or 6 different things: the health, wellness, family, education. That's not a military operation, right? That's a shotgun effect, and hopefully we'll land something. That didn't survive the test of time. And so Dave and I looked at each other and said, hey, are we going to do this thing? And if we're going to do it, we're going to do it on our own terms. And we realized that the blue water scenario was the veteran business. There are other people out there taking care of the family, the employment, the health, the welfare. That's taken care of. That's smothered in attention. What about the veteran business owner who just says, you know what, man, I just want to feed my family today. I just want another contract. I need to go figure out how to raise funds to buy a new truck so I can go do my business. That guy, that's the guy we're looking for. And if you're in the Houston if you're in the Houston market and you're a veteran business owner, we desperately need to hear from you. We need you to be counted. We need you to put your fingerprint on Houston. Now's your opportunity.
And it's an amazing thing when you did this study, as I read the review, and it was Houston was ranked 12th in veteran. And
yes.
You thought, hey, that's pretty good. But then you found out that 2 cities in Texas were ahead of you. You're not even number 1 in your own state.
Not a big fan of that.
That was a big change. What happened there?
Wow. So the Pentagon Federal Credit Union, who tracks this data, and they just started tracking a few years ago, did a study of the most veteran-friendly, veteran business-friendly cities in the United States. We started at number 10. We slipped to number 12. So they came in and presented this, and Dave, in his infinite wisdom, brought in some key leaders. The SBA, the mayor's office, brought in some key leaders all across Houston, some nonprofits that do this. And the Pentagon Federal Credit Union presented their findings. This is where we rank you. And boy, you should have heard the vitriol, the retired colonels and senior EMs in that room. They all put their uniform back on and were just bowed up. It was impressive, Frank. It was impressive. But what it did is it lit a fire under all of these organizations to commit. Well, they rallied around the Veterans Chamber of Commerce, and they let us. We didn't ask for this, but they let us rally the troops and become the center of the organization that helps coordinate efforts. We understand that we don't have to do all the things, Frank. I don't have to be the one teaching you classes about how to balance your books. There are organizations that will do that. I just need to put the two entities together. I don't need to teach you how to work your finances, so you can qualify for the SBA loan. The SBA has that. I just need to put you together and show you where that program is. And so these organizations all across Houston started tying the knots and figuring out how to work together through the Veterans Chamber. We took it from number 12 to number 5. That is impressive.
In less than a year.
In less than a year. In 1 year, we took it to actually less than a year, because we didn't start until a few months after that. So yeah.
This is, as I say all over every place I talk, that this is the model organization, period. And it takes people like John and Dave Weaver and Tricia and Dennis Stetzel,
oh my
and
gosh,
the whole entity, Spike,
That's right.
of
Jonathan
people.
Cacolice. I could spend the rest of the day listing names of people who were impactful. Frank Zaccari's of the world.
It's something that you have to get a hold of these people. I'm telling you, if you run an organization, you're not talking to John and to Dave, you're making a big mistake, because just follow a model.
Yeah.
So John, we're just about out of time. How can people contact you? How can they get a hold of you?
Wow. So that's easy. They just go to HoustonVeteransChamber.org. It's HOU veteranschamber.org. And that will take you to our website. Everything you need to know about us is there. We are 100% transparent. Matter of fact, we're so transparent. We just got our platinum award as a nonprofit. So everything you want to know about us is up there. Our calendar's up there. Our interactive map is up there. If you're a veteran-owned business and you're somewhere in the United States and you want to be on our map, send us your address and your website. We'll make sure you get on our interactive map. People can search the United States and it'll show up like a Yelp review. We'll find you. We have all of our board of directors up there. We have all of our leadership structure up there. We're ready to help. And, Frank, I got to be honest. A lot of people ask me, well, what does the chamber do? My favorite response to that is, what do you need done? What do you need done? We'll figure it out. I got to go knock on this door on this space. Great. We'll figure it out. Let's go there. I know a guy who can get you in that door. That's it. Full stop. Oh, I need a qualifier for SBA lending. No problem. We'll get you with my buddy Kevin. We'll sit you down with no problem. What do you need done?
Exactly.
Yeah. We don't have a menu. It's not a la carte. It's what do you need done? It's everything.
And this is something for the folks out there who are employers.
Yeah.
This is what veterans do.
This is what
veterans constantly, I didn't have veterans, their employers constantly complaining. I can't find good people, number one. I can't find loyal people. I can't find people with grit and persistence. And I look at them and say, you're looking in the wrong places.
I agree.
They're there.
I agree.
This is an organization you need to meet.
And there's something to be said. When you hire a veteran-owned business to fulfill your needs, you're getting a certain level of quality and accountability and a certain level of honor and respect. They take pride in their work. They're not just looking at you like a meal ticket, because they're doing that thing whether you're there or not. They like it that much. That's why they're there. So
it's incredible. Well, as I said, we're just about out of time. I want to thank my guest, John, today for
my pleasure, Frank.
These life-making decisions. He does things, and this organization does the right thing for the right reasons.
Yes, sir.
Everyone in the organization does. It's incredible to watch, and I'm honored that I can be involved with them. If you want to see John's story, he's going to be in the book, Business Secrets from the Battlefield to the Boardroom, and there'll be other stories by veterans, by military parents and children and supporters. The book will be out in late March. You can see this show on ROKU TV or on my YouTube channel, which is called Frank Zaccari. And if you go to YouTube, please subscribe. And let me leave you with this. None of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. And today, John showed us where many of those rocks are.
Yep.
So next week, we'll get another life-altering event. Thanks again, John.
Thanks, Frank. I appreciate it. This is an honor.